The appointed hour has arrived. I'll call to order the, I guess, our first public hearing. Joe, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, first item up is our public hearing on the Ag Security Area Update.
In accordance with Pennsylvania agricultural law, the governing body must conduct a review of the agricultural security area every 7 years. This review process is critical to ensure that the ASA remains compliant with statutory requirements and continues to serve its intended purpose. The ASA Advisory Committee met to conduct a review of existing parcels in addition to reviewing new requests for inclusion into the Harris Township ASA program. The review resulted in the recommendation to include the following parcels. I'm not going to read the tax IDs, but we have a 25.08 acre parcel owned by Andrew G. Freeman, a 3.39 acre parcel owned by Michael and Tara Immel, a 5.3 acre parcel owned by Michael and Tara Immel, a 45.23 acre parcel owned by Andrew Payne Fletcher, and an 18.81 acre parcel owned by Larry and Mindy Warwick. No existing parcels in the ASA requested to be removed, and these additions would increase the Harris Township ASA acreage to 3,316.26 acres. The Planning Commission reviewed the proposed ASA modifications at their December 16th, 2024 meeting and recommended that the Board of Supervisors approve the proposed modifications.
Do we have any public comments on this item?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We're adjourned. Next item up is proposed ordinance 7373, updating the solid waste and recycling regulations.
At its October 28th, 2024 meeting, the Center Region COG General Forum referred the revised model municipal solid waste ordinance to the municipalities participating in the regional refuse and recycling contract for adoption. The model ordinance was prepared in 2024 by a solid waste ordinance working group that consisted of representatives from participating townships, the COG, and the Center County Recycling and Refuse Authority. The motion included a deadline for adoption of March 30th, 2025. This timeline allows the ordinance to take effect prior to the commencement of the 2025 to 2030 regional refuse and recycling contract. The Board of Supervisors reviewed the revised model ordinance at the November 11th, 2024 meeting and directed that it be placed on a future agenda for potential adoption. The model ordinance is based upon the existing municipal waste ordinance with modifications to address regional issues such as dumping and to assist in regional and county solid waste management goals. Proposed Ordinance 373 comprehensively amends the regulations to incorporate the changes recommended in the model ordinance.
Any public comments on this item? We're adjourned. All right. Always in order. Okay. First item of business would be the minutes from the January 6th and January 22nd meetings.
Motion to approve both of those, sir.
Second.
Discussion? Comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Citizen comments. If anybody in the audience would like to offer some comments, now's the opportunity. Assuming this is something that's not on our agenda. Okay. Please.
Hi.
Introduce yourself.
Yep, I'm Elizabeth Crisfield. I am a resident of Harris Township. I live just down Chambers Alley, about half a block away. I'm also the executive director of Clearwater Conservancy. I have been since May, and I've been meaning to come to your meeting just to introduce myself. I have a conflicting meeting on this Monday night, so this is my first chance to come. So Clearwater is a nonprofit. We are an accredited land trust. We are also really a community partner for conservation. So we work with landowners who want to protect their land. We work with landowners who may have stream sides that are in poor condition, and we can help restore those through various grant sources. We also work with landowners who want to improve the habitat on their property, but they don't really know what to do or how to do it. So we can help with our expertise. And we also have a pretty strong outreach arm in the community. We want people to be able to engage in conservation even if they aren't landowners. So we give people a chance to come plant on places that need restoration, to replace trees if they've died. We also help people get out into the wilderness for health and wellness when they have lost that connection to the wilderness and don't feel comfortable out in the wilderness. So that is our Centered Outdoors program. We have hiking. We have a really well-attended wellness series that we're doubling events in this year, just serving the community in all the ways we can think of to help protect Center and surrounding counties and their habitats. So just wanted to make sure that you all knew me, and if you ever have a need for conservation, you can call me up and you know who you're calling. We really just want to be Township's partners and landowners as well. So I met Mark soon after I started. Denny and I met for coffee. I'd be happy to meet with anybody if they're interested in learning more about what Clearwater does. Great. It was so much fun. Yeah, it's a
I
great
don't know if you know me. I own Duffy's.
Yes, yes. Oh gosh, yes. And you were gone when I came to get your box. Yes. So Duffy's donated for our art and chocolate fundraiser on Friday night. Yeah, it was great. Thank you very much.
Any other
pleasure.
thoughts, comments, anybody?
I have a potential project for you down the road, so
Yeah, great.
we'll keep working on
We'll
it.
keep in touch.
And I'll say that I used to teach a class where I assigned Last Child in the Woods
Oh, yes.
as a reading for my class. And,
Yes.
unstructured outdoor experiences are really important.
Yeah, and we have a naturalist play day, which is specifically for that, just to let kids play in the woods.
Yeah,
Because a lot of families aren't comfortable with that anymore. So
I know.
yeah,
that's sad.
yeah, but we help with that too. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, thanks.
Any other citizen comments? Okay. Does anybody on the board have an item they wish to add to the agenda? No? Very good. Okay, next up, township business. Introduction of 2025 Boalsburg Fire Company officers.
How we doing, everybody? I'm Van Wonder, Chief of Boalsburg Fire Company. I'll let them all introduce themselves and what their number is, what position is.
Nate Fry, first assistant.
Eric Garrish, second assistant.
Greg Allers, third assistant.
Paul Robinson, fourth assistant.
See, we're organized. We're writing numerically in order. Well, thank you for everything. Thank you for everything you've done in the past for the Boalsburg Fire Company. It's a good working relationship with everybody. About a month ago, I provided everyone with a set of layout of what our 2023 year was for firefighting, financial stuff, what we're looking forward to doing, and all our, we have a latecomer here, so hang on a second. And all our records, what we did for as far as fires, EMS calls, accidents, and stuff like that. Anyone look at, anyone questions off of that, there's some numbers that changed out of it. We actually lowered our first unit outdoor responding. We lowered it by almost a minute from the year before. It was nearly 4 minutes before, now we're right in the area about 2 minutes and 50 some odd seconds. So we actually lowered it by a minute, which was, again, a little more staffing, people hanging out at the station, bunking in. We just got our second live-in back with us again. He was going for a year. So we have two of them there pretty much all time right now.
Yeah.
I would like, this is a question. I was looking here at the time spent on incidents. Could you please explain to me what Charles Graham does for 17 seconds?
He drove by, stopped, and dropped the mail off and signed the roll sheet and then left.
I had to ask that. It was so 17
That's
seconds.
pretty much, yeah, that's pretty much what probably what Bud did, you know. Extended.
Anybody else have any thoughts or comments?
Great job.
Thank you.
You guys do.
I commented before the meeting, I thanked Van for his input on the agenda item last month. regarding the water tank issue. I think that was quite well done. I think it swung the discussion in our way, so thank you, Ben.
Anybody else?
We had an addition on here. Gentlemen, the end is
I'm Simon Colby and the safety officer. Sorry I was late.
a short trip from Sealands Grove to here, so.
Right.
We actually, partway through 2024, we took in 3 members in like 2 months. And at that point in time, our rolls were showing 52 members. It's the first time in my 41 years in the fire company, that I remember us having over 50 members. Now, 1 member moved shortly afterwards. 1 member just turned his letter in for resignation. Another member has moved out of the area again, so now we're back under that. But we've been holding steady in the mid-upper 40s, which is good. We have nothing on the boards right now, I believe, do we?
No, the one important thing there from the members we did get this year is we got a firefighter from another area, so he came with experience. So very little training is going to be needed to get him doing what we need to do. So, you know, that's a big help. Saves a lot of time.
What's the next piece of apparatus to be replaced?
Nate?
Now we're looking at replacing our rescue. It's a 97. So we're looking at the feasibility of what equipment we want to haul, if we want to maybe combine 2 pieces economically. So we're in some discussion there, but we're going to replace our rescue trucks, which specializes in vehicle accidents, mountain rescues, anything that way.
Price tag?
Probably $1.2 million new.
Lead time.
Non-equipped.
Yeah, probably 4 to 5 year build time. So
Is it on order now, or just?
we have not ordered yet. We're still in the we're still speccing things out in the planning stages, but hopefully here in the next few months we have a final decision and a plan in place. So.
That's an expensive dream, isn't it? 1.2 million.
Sure is.
One of our points we're trying to figure out is how this roadway on 322 is going to affect us. You know, we're going to probably pick a lot up on that roadway. They're going to be higher speed. You're not going to have what we currently have on 322 and Bull Avenue, but the how access is going to work. We may be picking up a little more air coverage area just because we have better access getting into it, onto some of the roadways. So, and again, how that's going to come in and how it's going to filter in here. If we could get a better understanding here a little bit how much traffic they really expect to be on that roadway, that's going to maybe deter us from going from a heavy rescue like we currently have to maybe something like we just recently purchased, which has more rescue capabilities and they still have firefighting capabilities off of it, like with an engine and pump.
It's going to be more difficult for Central Hall to get on the highway.
Yeah.
Quite a bit?
Yeah, it's going to be harder for them to get where they need to be
yeah.
coming this way, especially towards the Harley shop.
Yeah.
Where for us, it's probably a lot easier for us to traverse that way and get there quicker.
Has that figured into their discussion with PennDOT at all? I mean, they don't
Care. Pretty much.
Right?
Well, no, they're the only accesses are going to be at Earlestown Road and Potter's Mills.
Yeah.
There'll be no entrances or exits for that 9 miles or whatever.
No, yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's going to,
Yeah.
probably going to be some dual responses
yeah.
off of that. So looking what they carry and what we carry, trying to discuss how that works out for us.
Anybody else? Comments, thoughts? Thanks for all you do for our
Good
community.
job, guys.
Oh, no problem. Thank you. Thanks for
Thank you,
everything you do
guys.
for us, for Boulder Fire Company. We greatly appreciate it.
Okay, where are we going?
Next item up is, we're gonna strike the Aikens replot minor subdivision plan from the agenda. Well, that moves us quite along. Okay, item C, automatic pool covers for in-ground swimming pools.
At the October 2024 meeting, 2 residents requested that the board consider an amendment to the zoning ordinance that would allow building code certified automatic swimming pool covers to serve as alternates to the current requirement for fences of at least 4 feet in height surrounding completely in-ground swimming pools. The board expressed some safety concerns at the meeting, but agreed to send the request to the Harris Township Planning Commission for discussion and recommendation. The Planning Commission discussed the matter at their October meeting and recommended that the board add automatic covers as an option in addition to the current fencing requirement. This recommendation was presented to the board at their November 2024 meeting, and after some discussions, it was decided that more information was needed before the board could decide whether to ask the Planning Commission for draft regulations. Since the November meeting, staff has searched for data on automatic pool cover safety, especially statistics that support the claims that covers are safer than fences. Staff was unable to locate any comparative safety data. Additionally, most of the information found supported the idea that covers in addition to fencing is the safest option for in-ground pool owners. Some of the information provided to the board in the December 2024 meeting manager's report was from the website of the requester's pool contractor. The recommendation is this is a discussion item. If the board feels that the requested amendment to the zoning ordinance is viable, the issue should be sent to the Harris Township Planning Commission for draft ordinance language. If the board does not want to amend the zoning ordinance in the manner requested, such should be formalized.
Let me pose a question, then I'll open it up. But the Planning Commission discussed the matter and recommended the board add covers as an option in addition to the current fencing required. So that was not as a replacement, but
It could be a replacement. They could do the swimming pool covers or the fence,
Okay.
or both.
all right. Thoughts?
Yeah, I, after, especially what you gave us and reading through all that stuff that came off the website, I still think you need a fence, and if you're gonna do it, you need both. I think you need the fence and both. That's the safest, and that's our job to make it the safest. I don't know that I'd wanna take a risk. I think you make the fence and the cover. Unless somebody comes up with some study that tells me different.
Anybody else? Denny, thoughts?
I agree with Frank. I think the double protection is well worth the extra effort and safety of the people that are around the pool.
Tracy? Anything?
I mean, you have the fence right now, but I'm uncomfortable without the fence. If I had a pool, I'd want both.
Yeah. Nigel?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the way our ordinance reads right now, the fence is required. We don't need to do anything to it. If somebody wants to put an automatic cover on it, that's their
Well,
choice.
and
So it doesn't even need to be put in an ordinance.
And I come back to, yes, you can prop open the gate to a fence, but that's a willful decision to make. You can forget to close the cover. So, you know, to me, the fence is the secure option, and I think that's where I stand on it.
I guess the point fact of the matter is I couldn't forgive myself if something happened and somebody forgot to close it and then somebody got hurt or somebody,
Yeah, so, how should we proceed here? Do we want to?
I don't know, Bruce, if you have anybody from the public that
Oh,
wants to
yeah,
speak.
please,
either
I'm sorry.
online or-
Yeah, anybody want to speak to this?
Hi, this is Scott Diebrich. Can I just ask or make a comment?
Please.
Let's see if I can turn my video on. I'm a little under the weather. I wanted to come in person like I did last time, but I couldn't. Didn't want to get everybody sick. Anyway, I was just wondering if the board would consider something instead of, even just an all black or white, yes or no on this. Some sort of other alternative as well. Like I said last time, I work in the nuclear industry and we analyze safety systems and how they can fail and determine whether they're adequate. And if we consider that swimming pool cover as a safety system and it's used to prevent a toddler from drowning, we could break it down like this. A toddler to drown in a swimming pool with an automatic cover without a fence, you would need the following things to happen. You would need the toddler not supervised by their parents and is allowed to wander off. Number two, you also need the swimming pool cover needs to be left open. And then number three, the swimming pool also needs to be unsupervised. So all those events also have a function of time to them as well. A toddler is not very fast typically and needs to traverse the distance from the yard to the swimming pool in the neighbor's yard. So I would argue there's another factor here to consider. I would argue that there is a much higher probability of this accident occurring if the houses are closer together. So in neighborhoods where the houses are sitting on just a quarter acre or less, that toddler would not have to travel very far. As comparison, for a lot like mine that's sitting on 3 acres, I have 2 acres of woods next to my house. On the other side of the house, I have an empty lot. I currently don't have any neighbors that have toddlers at all, but let's assume, for argument's sake, that someday that lot gets sold and a family moves in with a young child in it. In this scenario, the child still has to traverse a distance of at least a football field without the parents seeing them. And that would be in addition to me not supervising my swimming pool, in addition to leaving the cover off. So to me, it seems like the lot size here does make a big difference. And I was just wondering if the board would consider maybe a lot size requirement or maybe some sort of exemption on a case-by-case basis. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. We have another comment?
Seems to me this is worth addressing, and then I'll speak.
Todd, in your research, did you find lot size as a variable in any of the research you did?
No.
No?
I guess, okay, I'll just say it. If I had a swimming pool, I'd want the safest thing available. And the safest thing to me is I would have a cover and I would have a fence. And I just don't understand. I mean, I grew up around swimming pools. My family had a swimming pool in Crabtree, Pennsylvania. I guess I just don't understand. I just don't understand. Swimming pools are inherently dangerous. That's why insurance rates are so high with swimming pools. I just don't understand why you wouldn't want the safest option as having both. I guess that's my question. I don't understand.
My name is Jeff Hayes. I live at 302 Mountain Road. So are you suggesting an ordinance that requires both a fence?
No.
Well, why not, if that's the highest standard of safety?
Well, my problem is what we have now, to me, is, I can trust you, and I can sit here and say, I think you're a very trustworthy person, and maybe I say, okay, fine, for you, I would think that maybe this would be a good option. Like, I don't know, I'm sorry, I don't know you, but say I feel that you're a very trustworthy person, but my problem is what happens when the next person comes along, or the next person comes along, and then all of a sudden things aren't so trustworthy, and so now I feel responsible, and if somebody doesn't shut the lid. And so I guess that's my real problem with the whole thing, is I feel ultimately responsible in making a decision. And I would feel ultimately responsible if somebody got hurt in reference to my decision. And that makes me really uncomfortable.
Yeah, I can empathize with the position that you're all in. It's what I expressed at your November 11th meeting. You bear a lot of responsibility here. And what I heard, I believe all 5 of you agree to, is that the highest standard of safety is for a fence and a pool cover. So my question is, why not change the ordinance in favor of both, if that is the position that all 5 of you currently have? It's not the only question I have, but it's a starting question.
I mean, I can answer that for myself. We know the data for the fence. We know what happens with the fence. We understand all that happens with the fence.
What are the data with regard to a fence? As I understand what Mr. Shea said, and what's recorded on your website, data were not obtained regarding pool covers. So what are the data regarding fences?
That is obtainable.
So what are they?
Do we have data that?
We'd have to go back. I don't have it handy on me, but no, the literature that was provided to us and some that we also found does reflect general safety characteristics of fences. I don't think that we found anything that compared and said a pool cover without a fence was equal, and that was really what we were trying
Yeah.
to find for the board, so.
I'll
we'd have
read,
to go
I'll
back
read
and
from
forth.
your November 11th, 2024 minutes on page 8. Mr. Beckel asked the board to provide him with what information they, I think there was a typo, want staff to look into. So I'd like to know what information the board provided to Mr. Beckel.
Well, they didn't provide anything to me. They asked us as staff to look into the information.
Okay.
And that was to find if there was any studies out there that showed that a pool cover by itself was equal in safety to a fence. So that is what we looked into. I believe, Todd, you can correct me, you folks may have been the ones who sent some information. We
That's
looked
correct.
on the website that you sent to us. Some of that literature referred to having both as being the safest option. They didn't have any data about the cover by itself. Certainly they talked about how good covers are, but not by themselves. And we looked around online at some other resources. Again, I don't have that handy, but it was provided to the board as part of their packet, not as a discussion item, but just information for them to look at in December.
Okay.
So they looked at that, at their leisure after they received it.
So what's the argument for a pool cover versus a fence? Is it aesthetics?
The argument from my perspective is that it's safer than a fence. A fence can be scaled. A fence degrades over time. The pool cover, is my understanding, I'm not saying that I have expertise, is that because it's on a track that the pictures show an elephant standing on it. So as long as it's closed, the pool simply cannot be accessed. Whereas when you have a fence can be scaled. There can be a hole in a fence. Once a fence is put in and there are no inspections, over time, you're worried about the next resident and the next resident. My sense is that as long as the pool cover is maintained, it is harder to gain access to the pool, to the water, which is a drowning hazard, than it is to scale a fence.
So there are minuses to both.
Absolutely.
If that's the case, let's put the two positives together and do a fence and a cover.
That would be absolutely fine with me. And then I would ask, why not have that reflected in your ordinance?
Seems to me that would put a increased financial burden on people to install a pool cover as well as a fence.
No.
Finances and death don't match.
I'm sitting here listening and I heard he threw the nuclear thing out, so I apologize, guys. But, the first part of reactor safety is the operator. That's number one, and you make sure that your operators are well trained. And that's where I'm at with this, okay? You can sit here and tell me, oh yeah, we're gonna take care of it. We're going to do this, but there's going to be somebody comes along that isn't going to do that. And that's where I come in. Right now, we know fences. We have no history of injuries or anything for pools with fences in our township. Now, that being said, we don't know about covers without the fences. And until we do know something more, I do believe that fences are going to be required with covers until we get some data or somebody tells us we don't have to do that. But I don't see myself changing on this, and I don't think adding fences or covers on places that have fences is going to make a difference there.
Why would that not make a difference?
What we're talking about here is you've got a new technology that you want us to sit down and say, go ahead and put this technology in, it's better, but we have no data on that. Until we get data on it, and you say, well, it'll maintain, but chemicals in pools do have a habit of eating metal, and they eat it pretty well. And so who's going to change that every so often when that happens? So
I don't understand
know.
your comment that it wouldn't make a difference when 10 minutes ago, all 5 of you agreed that this was the highest standard of safety.
It was the highest standard of safety with the cover.
That's correct.
That's what we were talking. When you said we want to put a cover on, we said the highest standard with a cover is to have a fence also. That's exactly what we said.
So you would be in favor of an ordinance change that required both?
No.
Why
No.
not?
You didn't hear what I said.
Why
said-
not require the highest level of
Let me-
safety for
let me
citizens of
finish.
Harris
Let me
Township?
finish. Right now, we know we have a level of safety with fences. We know we have that level.
What level of safety is that?
No drownings since we put fences on the ordinance. I guess that's as good as you can get. So, and that's, I'm talking Harris Township. And then you're saying, well, you want to put this thing on without a fence, and we know a fence works, and we're saying no. If you're gonna, we're not gonna go away from the fence. We want a fence around pools. That's the bottom line. Whether you put a cover on or you don't, we want a fence around pools.
And
That's
the
what I'm
primary disincentive to changing your ordinance is money.
No, not for me, it isn't.
My issue stays the same. I think we require both.
Okay?
And do away with what if variable. Do them both, and financial burden is gonna rest on somebody. And I think the pool owner needs to realize there's gonna be a cost involved in that.
No.
What does the cover, did you do any pricing of covers? What's the cover cost?
Roughly $20,000 to $25,000.
Huh?
The fence is far less than that.
Now, these things wouldn't even work on an above-ground pool, and I think the majority of the pools we
Are
have
above
in this township are above-ground pools. And they're required to have an automatic gate closer. It has to be spring-loaded, will close. So unless somebody actually deliberately props it, it's going to get closed.
Right. So can I ask, does Harris Township have an ordinance regarding ponds?
With respect to
A fence being put around ponds?
pond.
No,
And why is that?
pond's not a man-made object typically. It's
But
not, it's not a structure. It doesn't qualify as under the definition of structure.
But there are human-made ponds in
Sure there
Harris
are.
Township.
But they don't qualify under the definition of structure.
Do they present a drowning hazard?
They do, but you can only require fencing or some kind of safety feature on something that you're issuing a zoning permit for. We don't issue zoning permits for ponds.
Could you? Is that within your purview?
I don't know why we would want to, since it's not a structure. How can we
Because it
require-
presents a drowning hazard to toddlers.
Oh, I think we're getting a little far away from the topic at hand, which is in-ground swimming pools.
I'm talking about a drowning hazard on properties in Harris Township based on the concerns that have been raised tonight and previously in October and November. So I don't understand why you define a pool as 18 or more inches of water. The same concerns would not apply to a property owner who has a body of water on their property that is in ground. Call it a pond. Why are you not concerned?
I think Todd explained that. I mean, to me, that's clear.
No. Todd explained an ordinance based on a structure. What I've heard expressed here are concerns about life and secondarily liability. So why do those concerns not apply to ponds in Harris Township?
And automatic pond cover?
I'm guessing that was sarcastic. I'm asking
No,
about a fence,
Yeah.
right? You're all in favor of fences around bodies of water,
No,
That
we didn't say around bodies of water. It said swimming.
around a pool. Okay, so Frank, what's the difference between a fence around a pool?
Well, I think
And
Todd
it-
pretty much explained that. It's one's man-made, the other one's not.
No, ponds can be
They can.
You're gonna
human-made.
start pushing this and saying
Okay.
we should put a fence around an ocean. We should put a fence around, what
There are
is
no
the-
oceans in Harris
But it
Township.
doesn't matter, I mean,
What
is
about
that,
puddles?
Let's put fences along every roadway, so kids
Do you,
can't
do
run out of the
you,
street.
do you bear
I
a
mean,
sense of responsibility for children's safety in
I
Harris
bear
Township?
responsibility, you are asking, I'm not even like at the point right now, what do you want? What is it that you are looking for? What is it that
Consistency.
you want?
I would like you to be consistent.
We are consistent. We have an ordinance in front of us that we are comfortable with at this point, and we've been consistent with this. And you're asking us to consider a new technology. That's what you're asking. That is
That's right.
ultimately what you're asking. Going away from the subject or whatever you want, that's another thing altogether. You are asking us to consider a new technology coming in that I personally am uncomfortable with.
I hear your
I'm just
discomfort.
But and that's the point. Now, maybe 5 years down the line, things change. I don't know. But I'm uncomfortable with a new technology that's coming in that you prefer instead of a fence. And that's my discomfort. I am ultimately responsible in this scenario that you are offering right now. I am ultimately responsible in my decisions. So, I mean, like I said, 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, when we see what the information is on these covers, that's a completely different story. But right now, we don't know how these things are maintained. We don't know that these things are going to be maintained. Maybe 5 years down the line, when people start using these, they're finding that they break down. They're finding that people aren't maintaining them. They're finding that ultimately they're not as great as people thought they were. And that still bears responsibility to me. And I am the one responsible for making that kind of decision. And that makes me uncomfortable.
Okay.
Like I said, 5 years down the line, 8 years down the line, when we can
I
see
understand.
what they are.
I
And
understand.
that's the bottom line for me.
So I'd like to hear from each of you the bases on which you're rejecting the recommendation of your planning commission.
Our planning commission makes a recommendation to us, and we don't have to follow that recommendation.
I understand that, Tracy. So on what bases are you rejecting the recommendation from your planning commission?
It is it's
from their
ultimately my
October meeting?
responsibility. It is my responsibility.
And you think the planning commission doesn't have a responsibility?
I think that they make recommendations based on what they believe, but ultimately what it comes down to, it is my decision, not theirs. They recommend my decision.
Okay, so you have a difference of opinion with your planning
Yes,
commission?
I do.
Okay.
If I may, I think we're going in circles here.
No, my question has not been answered. You have a planning commission, you referred this issue to them, and they made a recommendation. Whether you follow that recommendation or not is entirely up to you, but if you disagree with it, I would like to know the basis for that.
I think we've explained the basis of that.
You've explained yours.
I agree with her.
I'm not repeating
Simple.
myself.
No.
I've
I
already
mean,
said it.
I've been doing this a long time, and we haven't come across an issue like this. You're trying to push something more to try to get what you want to be less. Because, like, you don't want to build a fence, but you want to spend $25,000 on an automatic pool cover, and then a thunderstorm happens when you're in the pool, and the power's out, and it won't close. The fence is closing. I think we're done. I agree with Bruce. This could go on, and it's pointless.
Could you consider Scott's request of you? The
I'm
man who spoke first.
I'm just uncomfortable. Like I said, 5 years down the line, when we have some information, I may very well be perfectly comfortable, but right now, I'm uncomfortable.
Well, I'll say that my position is that we require fences. If someone wants to include a pool cover, they're certainly welcome to do that. But I'm not willing to move away from fences.
Okay, it seems pretty clear the direction of the board. Is there any consideration that you would give to incentivizing what we've all agreed on is the highest level of safety for residents of Harris Township for pool owners who include both a pool cover and a fence?
Well,
I support that idea, but I'm not sure about the financial implications of doing it. Bruce mentioned that. You yourself are $20,000.
I'd appreciate it if there were no sarcastic comments made while I was speaking. I'm sorry, Danny, I missed what you were saying.
I'll vote in favor of doing both, but you have to be prepared to justify to your neighbor putting $20,000 in a cover.
Where I live, I don't have any neighbors nearby, which is part of the value of
We have
Scott.
other pools. We have 2 pools in Aspen Heights. 2 in-ground pools.
we don't have an incentive. We couldn't give them we can't give a tax break. Obviously, we can't financially fund it, so what incentive could we give them? Nothing. We could just put it out that, we require fences. If you want to put that on, that's up to you, and it is the safest way, and let the people decide. That's the only, we don't have an incentive. We aren't a major city, we aren't a state, and we surely aren't the federal government. We don't have monies that we can just put into incentives.
A building's code certified covers.
You have a, no.
Just listening to the conversation.
Okay, I mean, to me, if we wanted to go for requiring both, that would be a different discussion.
Yeah.
And we'd have to let other members of the township know that now we're gonna require them to do both and increase that financial burden. That would be a whole nother discussion. For the moment,
And I'm prepared to do that. But,
Okay.
yeah. I have to convince my colleagues to do it.
yeah, well, but I said, I think that would be a further
It's
discussion.
a totally different item.
Right now, we require fences, and I don't hear any of us saying that we should stop requiring fences. We good?
Good.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Next up, Resolution 25-04, Ag Security Area Update.
I was not planning on reading that item again.
Okay.
Jenna does have a presentation if you'd like to hear a little bit more about the ag security area.
Mhm.
Oh, darn it, I gotta let you share, I'm sorry, we never, darn it, I didn't think about this. There you go, now you should be good.
Is it long?
No.
30-some slides, right?
Short,
Now
sweet.
that's sarcasm.
All right, so benefits being an ASA, just overall nuisance ordinance protections. It's kind of the first step in getting into more of these agricultural conservation easements. There's no restriction on selling or developing your land, so there's kind of, it's not a bad thing to be out of. So as part of that, we sent out 411 letters. We received 41 responses back. No removals have been requested. 6 requests for inclusion were provided to staff. We reviewed them with the committee and has recommended that 5 parcels be included into the ASA program as provided in your agenda language. I have these parcels included as well. And you will notice some of them in this instance, they
That's
are
the
less
piece,
than
okay.
10, but because they are continuous, you can have smaller parcels be included as well.
Give me direction on that one.
The directions?
Yeah.
That
Give me a
is,
road bearing.
you see, the
Tussey Mountain.
subdivision plan you would have had on your agenda tonight on the far left.
Oh,
Tussey's on
okay,
the right.
okay. What,
Yeah.
okay, other side. That's right, the road
Mhm.
cabins there, okay, okay.
And then just your stats with these inclusions, you'll be increasing your acreage by a little less than 98 acres for this time around.
You mentioned 41 responses.
Yep.
Generic responses? I like the idea, and I don't like the idea, what?
It was more responses, yes, include me, and they had already been included.
So they said they didn't want to drop out.
Yes,
Yeah.
We had no one
received
drop
no
out.
one.
No.
Okay.
No, we had to send out letters to everybody who's in,
Yeah.
Yes.
and they had the option of saying, I want to stay in, but if they didn't get back to us, then they still stay in. So it
Okay.
was really an option if they say, I don't want to stay in, but
No word is good word.
Yep.
that's right.
Okay.
In this
Exactly.
instance, yes.
Okay.
And that is it.
I'll tell you what, being the chair of that committee, I would move the motion as found on
25-04.
page 4. Move to approve resolution 2504, adopting the 2024 update to the Harris Township Ag Security Area.
Second.
You gotta be quick. Any further discussion on this? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
Look forward to the next one in 2025, which is 7 years from now.
Not my problem. Okay, up next is proposed ordinance 373, updating the solid waste and recycling regulations.
Held a public hearing on this earlier this evening. I'm not going to read the agenda language, but if you have any questions about the ordinance, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Anybody have any thoughts?
Major change in new cans.
Well, I'll move to approve.
Basically it.
I haven't seen Canada.
I'll move to approve proposed ordinance 373, updating the township solid waste and recycling regulations.
Second.
No further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. Draft traffic calming policy.
The Board of Supervisors was provided with a copy of a draft traffic calming policy with the January's manager's report. The policy was prepared utilizing a PennDOT handbook as well as policies from multiple municipalities around the state. If adopted, this policy would establish the process of evaluating the need for traffic calming devices. The draft policy includes engineering-related requirements as recommended by PennDOT, along with a heavy public engagement component. Requests for a traffic calming study must be supported by at least 10 property owners in the affected area. Multiple public surveys are also conducted throughout the study to gain feedback from residents and ensure that they're supportive of any proposed traffic calming plan. All studies would be overseen by the local Transportation Advisory Committee, which would be created by this policy, or LTAC. The committee would include several members of township staff, a representative from the Board of Supervisors, a representative from the Planning Commission, and a resident. The policy could also include the requirement that a representative from the neighborhood requesting the study be appointed to the committee. The board should discuss the policy and provide feedback to staff. There are some aspects of the policy, such as limits for excessive speed, that can be modified if needed. The township does not have equipment to collect data needed for the studies identified in the policy, so that if the policy is approved in the future, equipment may need to be purchased or data acquired using a consultant. And what I'll note is the most common aspect of this that I think I saw that was different, aside from the public engagement part of this, was the speed limit, the 85th percentile speed limit. So the draft I gave you is 10 miles an hour over. It could be 5, it could be 7. Those were the 3 thresholds that PennDOT said are appropriate. Probably not a one-size-fits-all for all streets, but nonetheless a number that you would have to establish in a policy. As I mentioned in my agenda language here, the whole idea behind this being very heavy on public engagement is anytime you're putting on traffic calming devices in a neighborhood, it's going to disrupt the current traffic flow. It's going to impact the people who live there. So it's just really important to make sure that the people that live along that street are supportive of it, that it's not just at 1 or 2 people that want to see these put in. It really is a neighborhood interest. Certainly, as it's noted in here as well, using this policy, we should first look at kind of conducting the other 3 E's, which is education, enforcement, and engineering. There are going to be times where some of those are not possible on streets, so it's still a good idea to at least invest in those 3 to try to get compliance before we go through a full-blown study. And then ultimately as well, this policy doesn't have any stipulations on how devices would be paid for. So that's another matter that funding would be something that would have to be decided on if devices are identified as an option as part of a plan. So I'm just looking for feedback tonight. Certainly happy to bring it back at a future meeting with more information if you need it, or have it reviewed by our traffic engineer further if you'd like that as well.
I got a couple of minor questions. The 400 vehicle per day, that's the BPD. How's that determined? By a counter?
Yeah.
That requires a.
There would be a counter out there. You can use, speed capture cameras will also count vehicles, but you'd have to have one going in each direction, I think, to really capture it, but.
Does street width have anything to do with this?
Street.
Could we put one of these on Academy close to the section of Main because it's basically one vehicle wide street?
One of these what?
But calming device.
Well, it depends on what type of calming device you use. I think in our case, you don't have a lot of choices other than speed humps. Certainly there are other things that can be done. Aside from paint, you can use paint that's kind of that's more of a first level engineering approach to try to get people to slow down. If you're going to do physical improvements where you build something, chicanes, bump outs along the road, that's really hard though. And
You can't do that on the
no,
street.
we don't have the widths, and also that would be a pain when we're plowing. You don't want to run into a bump out with a plow.
Can you define cut-through traffic?
So that would be where someone is using a neighborhood to get from point A to point B because it's faster. I don't know that we have a lot of that, if any, here in the township. It would be, it'd be difficult though for someone to say, I'm going to take and drive through the hill, for example, rather than taking Bowl Avenue. Odds are it's still faster just to take Bowl Avenue. So there are certainly places where you see cut-through traffic because it's faster than taking a major roadway, but not necessarily in the township here that I'm aware of.
That's my three.
My only comment was, as I read this, and at the beginning, I'm not like into, because I have this theory that, not theory, but thought that you start traffic calming and one does it, and then you got 50 more coming in. But I like the idea of everything that we have to do to get to that point. And the one thing I liked on this was where it says approval of the Board of Supervisors. And at the very end, it says, if funding is unavailable, the approval plan may become a future project once funds are available. That to me, I'm comfortable with that then, because at the end of the day, we can't be putting a lot of stuff in if we don't have the money to do it. In other words, we can't go broke with the traffic.
And it has to be a case-by-case issue. We can't do a blanket kind of statement about where these would go.
No, that's what the whole point of this
Very
policy
specific,
is.
yeah.
If someone comes in and requests a study, and we move forward with it, the board says let's do a study. It would only apply to that area that's part of the study. It wouldn't be elsewhere.
I like that part of the document, and it's a very thorough
Are
discussion.
you prepared?
Tracy?
Are you prepared? Because I'm sure that if we're going to do this, you're going to end up with quite a few requests.
Well, sure, we probably will end up with quite a few, and I think that would be another matter as well. If we don't have the resources to handle more than one study at a time, that's all we can do. As I mentioned, we don't have even the data collection equipment yet, and they're around $7,000 for a
Is there
speed
language
sign.
in there to that effect, that they will be considered as they come in?
I don't know that that's in
Maybe
here
that's something that might just
explicitly.
need added, that,
Prioritize conservation?
as they come in, we would do them.
Normally, and I think it comes down under submittal of request for the study, once received, it's going to be considered by the board. So at that point, if we have one already in process and we have another request come in, they'd come before you as a board, and certainly I'd be letting you know whether or not we have the capacity to take that on now, or if it needs to be postponed until the other study that we're working on is completed.
The other priority would be whether the neighborhood can generate 10 signatures.
Correct. And that's another matter too. 10 is it's an arbitrary number. You could do a different metric of how you want to have community support before we engage in the
I
process.
also think that you have to take a look at, like, for example, Academy Street. There aren't that many houses. Is it fair to say you need 40 signatures when perhaps you're not going to get 40 signatures on Academy Street?
Right.
So
Should it be a percentage? Should it be a percentage?
You could do a percentage for the application. I think that's the only part of this where there's a solid number required. All the other ones are percentage based. So it's, the percentage of ownership, for example, needs to vote in favor of a plan. But if you wanted to change that number to something else, like a percent, we could.
So what happens if an overwhelming number of citizens in this township agree that they want to have a tax for safety purposes, to have traffic calming devices in this township?
I don't believe there's anything in the second-class township code that allows us to have a tax for that specific purpose. You certainly could have it added as part of a capital tax or something like that, I suppose, but it would probably be under a general purposes tax that you would have to look at funding these.
I mean, I doubt that's gonna happen, but I was just wondering.
Sure. Yeah.
Michael?
Yeah, I mean, Academy Street, isn't really that long. Do you think we even get 400 trips a day out of that?
I'm not
Or
sure.
100 in a peak? I mean,
I don't know if we do or not. Those are PennDOT standards of what you should be looking at
I mean,
for any study.
yeah, I mean, I know you spent a lot of time on this. I mean,
This is a great draft.
It is a
absolutely
great draft, but
fantastic
boy,
draft.
is it like, you know.
Be tough to implement.
It's,
Okay.
yeah, tough to implement, and it's like, almost like an oversized weapon for a possible problem. You know, the fact that we, again, is this really necessary at all? Because it is gonna take a lot of time, it's gonna be some expense, and at the end of the day, like, is anybody really gonna qualify under
I can't
the
answer if
PennDOT
anybody will
standards
qualify.
here? You know?
Well, I don't think that
So-
following PennDOT standards is necessarily where we want to be. I think that there's a percentage that we should be looking at. I don't think that, right, you're never going to get 400 cars on Academy Street. But I think that looking at the percentage, given that the street is so narrow, and looking at what happens on that street individually, it's the same thing with Main Street. Looking at Main Street and seeing what happens on that street, like specifically what's going on in our township, is important.
I just need a clarification.
The municipalities that have done this have used the same PennDOT?
For the most part, I've seen some variation, but not to the point that it would necessarily impact what Nigel's referring to, where these numbers were down extremely low. I didn't see any where they're saying 100 trips per day or anything like that. I honestly don't know how many trips per day there are on Academy Street as an example, but Todd, do you have, I mean, off the top of your head, do you think there's, 20, maybe 25 homes up and down the street?
On Academy Street itself.
Right.
20 or 25 or more.
So if you're talking 25 homes at 10 trips per day, which is what the ITE manual recommends we use, that's 250, and that's not counting anything that might be coming out of Springfield Commons. So I'm not saying they get 400 a day, but it's possible that they do.
Frank?
Yeah, I just had clarification on this. I want to make sure I understand. The reason this has come about is because we had people wanting to come in here, and we can't do that until we have this. Is that my correct?
You shouldn't do that without some type of a policy, because otherwise you're engineering for something without knowing what the best solution is.
And with that being said, I have no problem with, proceeding with this, because I would sooner have a policy before we come in Academy Street and we put a couple speed bumps or something, and then we have somebody come from this one. So I agree that we need a policy, and I like to start here, and I think going to the traffic guy might be a good thing, next step.
I mean, I think we could fine tune this, but I like having a policy because it makes it black and white.
Yeah, it's a starting point.
It's like,
Yeah.
I worry about snow plowing, chicanes, even speed bumps. I mean, how do they?
You have to do speed humps. You can't, a speed bump would be terrible for a snowplow. A speed hump, if designed and built correctly, they can go up over and plow over them.
Okay.
They certainly have to slow down when they're doing it,
I
though.
also worry about fire protection.
Sure.
As another aspect of putting in things.
Well, there must be data about that.
I
Sure
do
there
think that we should put in next year's budget to purchase some
A device.
a device or two devices to be able to do the monitoring. Because these things come up all the time, and yes, we can
3 years.
get one from somebody and we can hire consultants, but hiring consultants are expensive.
One of the nice things about having a speed monitoring device is that goes into one of those E's, which is education. Putting that out there for people to realize how fast they're driving can be valuable at slowing cars down.
Yeah.
Because when it starts flashing at you and you're going over the speed limit, you tend to notice.
A speed bump versus a chicane?
I mean,
What's the difference?
A chicane?
Yes,
It's a
chicane.
bump out on the road. So imagine, curb that kind of deviates out into the roadway, so you have to slow down to go around it.
Couldn't do that on a
I
county
go to
street.
Australia all the time, and I just view those, people view those as a challenge. It's like, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
The canes are big in racing. So.
Yeah. So I think, let's get into the budget next year,
Right, no
some
problem.
monitoring devices. We get these questions coming up, and it's useful to have the information. I think we should spend a little bit of money on some paint, and there's some various ideas up on,
Main Street.
I'm thinking of Circleville, no, yeah. They've got like white paint sticking out from the sides. Just makes the road seem a little smaller. Doesn't change the road, it's cheap. It wouldn't cost us much to do it. Putting the center line down the road makes it seem small. So there's some things we could do with paint that we really ought to look into, because
Is there any, I'm sorry, is there any studies in reference to paint?
I'm sure
there
PennDOT,
are, yeah. And that's something I can ask our traffic engineer about,
Yeah, but
what's out
Well,
there.
even if you put 35 mile an hour on, in white paint across this road, that, believe it or not, that is better than people seeing little signs. They don't look for the signs, but they'll see that in the middle of the road.
I have seen the speed signs that when you get back down under the speed limit, it shows a smiley face.
Right.
It's positive feedback, and people are like, yeah. At least it worked for me.
I think it's a good place to start.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I agree.
Yeah, I think definitely we ought to get at least one of those speed monitoring things,
So keep it rolling.
which I pushed before and you all didn't. want to
No, I
spend
pushed
money.
him first, and nobody wanted to spend more than I wanted.
So do you want us to
Bud
go through
Bud was
this
always a Debbie.
and give you comments?
If you have comments, please do.
Specifically?
Yes,
Okay,
yeah,
I'd be
that'd be
glad to
great.
do that.
Okay.
I think we all should take a peek at it and see what our comments are. If this is going to be, if we're looking into a policy, I think we should all have comments
Yeah.
about it, because if there's 5 of us looking at it, we can do better than,
Yeah. And the percentage of homes
oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
makes a
Frank,
lot more sense.
Read it over.
Yeah, I can do that.
Take it with
I'll
you.
change that.
And
We'll read it again and mark
as far as
what
the
you,
specific
mark your
speed
questions.
thing,
The whole thing.
I don't know, what's everybody else doing?
Well, it varies. There's some that are 10 in the region, there's some that are 7, I think, and that's the only 2 that I saw, and I do see we have a comment up here from someone in the public as well. Lisa Holland has her hand up,
All
but
right, well, let's hear that.
Hi,
Lisa?
as you know, representing Academy Street. And, I heard you talking, I haven't seen a draft of the policy, so I heard you talking about the 400 cars. And for us on Academy Street, the issue isn't just the number of cars. There's no sidewalks. There are children walking up the street on their way home from school. There are many, many more people walking on the street because of the connection that we have now with the new development. And there are people speeding up the street that you can barely get through with 2 people passing. So the number of cars, while relevant, is very small piece of what the issue is that's going on there. I have to say I am totally in favor of having a policy about it and not going one-offs on this, so I'm commending you on that, and I would like, if possible, to see a copy of the draft policy so we could, weigh in from, as you know, the Academy Street people have been worried about this for quite some time, and with the addition of the connection to the new development, we're even more concerned.
I can provide you with a copy of that policy. I was letting the board have their first kind of look at it and feedback, but I'll certainly send it out to you now that they've been able to provide some feedback on it.
But that's why I was
Thank you.
looking at a proportion rather than
Okay,
a definite, just have some kind of proportion.
so we'll keep working on this.
Didn't we get a request on West Main too?
Yes, that was actually the first request to come in. It was prior to me being your manager, but yes, West Main did submit an email regarding their concerns. And I've had periodic emails from Dr. Love and a few other folks on West Main asking about the policy.
Quite different. The Academy experience versus the West Main experience is a big difference.
Sure.
Road. Further thoughts, discussion? Should we move on?
Can I just have a question? When you turn onto West Main Street, like from 45, where is the first speed limit sign?
It's
pretty immediate.
Is it?
As soon as you round
Right
the
around that
curve.
curve, yeah, I
As
was
soon
gonna
as you
say, I
round
think it's right around the
there's
curve.
one.
Just trying to think the
I
last
was
time I was out
just
there.
curious.
This is
Morning when I
right.
come to work.
There
Okay.
you go. Take note.
Okay, next item up is our transient retail merchant license ordinance.
That was me, and I'm sorry.
Well, why don't I let you take the lead on your thoughts on this?
I think it needs to be, there are parts of it that needs to be rewritten immediately. Because they're absolutely inappropriate, and we know that. So I guess, like, I was talking to Mark about it, and he said that we need to kind of instruct them as to, you know, what we're thinking about, and even if we start and kind of like hedge into it, I think it's important, especially with, you know, the season coming up, that we get rid of the social security numbers, we get rid of, you know, the different things like that, that we should find different information. That's number one. Number two, I was talking to Mark earlier, and I think my problem with this is the enforcement of it, and how to enforce something like this. And I really don't understand the practicality of the enforcement. And I think that comes under the, what exactly are we looking for? If we find that we are looking for information, if we find that we have to have some sort of compensation to cover our costs in township to go through this information, I'm not quite sure. And I think that if we're going to enforce this, and we're going to say, okay, well, fine, you know, we're going to enforce it at Memorial Day, or we're going to enforce it here, and we're going to enforce it there, the easy things. Well, we need to enforce it everywhere. And that's my problem with it, because we really don't have the ability to do that. So my comment about the whole thing is, if the information is truly what we're looking for, we need to focus on the information, especially with the transient retail merchant license. The other thing that I'm saying with this, and I find it offensive, myself having a business, and even other people, like I've talked to a basketful, I've talked to other people who have businesses in this township that are very present, and saying that you need to get a transient merchant license to sell things elsewhere. You know, who are you protecting people from? Ourselves? And I find that extremely business unfriendly. And I think that that really needs to be considered, considering some of the tenor in the past years in things that have been said about businesses, especially with the parking issue. So all in all, I guess my problem is, and I will say this, we are not College Township. We are not any other township in the state. And in looking at other townships, some townships sub this out, some townships have no regulations. There's all across the board. But my problem, again, you go back to it, is unless we're willing to enforce everything, it seems to me that we can do a better job and collect information that we need, and we can work with a venue to make things much more friendly. And if we need to charge a venue, we charge a venue. But that's probably the most problem I have. And then when you go to peddling and soliciting, that has to be looked over completely differently, because this is going to our homes, people coming to our homes. And I think that needs to be checked out a little bit more. I think that really needs to be a more of a stringent check. But that's been only my real issue with this. And I do think that we need to start by looking at what is in the license application. I just talked to Robin about that, and she found a little bit of it quite offensive when she went and filled it out. And I think that's important that we alter that immediately, and then we start looking at different things in this. So that's my comment about it. There's a lot of things in here that are really not good.
Thoughts, Frank? Thoughts?
Well, I thought we took the social security out.
We didn't remove it from the ordinance now.
We haven't touched the ordinance.
Well, I don't have a problem with taking some of the information out, but I do think that, you know, having it's not a problem, but the thing that I'm still kind of a little spiffed on is how the Conservancy just refused to cooperate with us. If you remember when we put this out, they kind of, we said, you know, we tried to offer them, you know, an easier way of doing it, of them putting a list together and paying a fee as an organization. We tried some things and they didn't want to even do it anything. And to me, the easiest way to do this for major events like Memorial Day would be to have the Conservancy put the information that we want, that we want, right into their
Yeah.
into their thing, and they can charge the people, and we can charge a minimal fee to them. But I would be amenable to something like that. But as far as having it, I don't think it's a problem. It's not nearly what I thought it would be. The first year, you know, I don't think people had it, but it seemed like we improved last year, and I think we'll improve again this year. So I don't think it's as big a problem as people think. I think that, yeah, we're a little more invasive in what we're asking, but I would be willing to look at, you know, for major events, having some kind of a easier way of doing it, because that saves our staff time and effort. You know, that's the only thing I would say.
But that's kind of like what I'm looking for, is saying, if we're not gonna police every single event, then we work with every single event to get the information that we want. We work with every single event to charge for what it costs us to review it, or to have it, or to do what we need. We make a decision on that, and we let it go, and then we don't have to police, and we don't have to do that. And I guess that's what I'm kind of looking at, because if we're gonna do a license, I'm sorry, we have to police. You can't just police Memorial Day because it's right here, or, you know, and just not anybody else.
From the township perspective, have we, any hiccups in this thing? What kind of feedback, positive and negative, are we getting on this?
I don't know, Todd, if we've really had any hiccups per se. I mean, folks sometimes are unaware of it until the last minute and they come in to apply, you know, with short notice. But I think we've even gotten to the point now where we're emailing them a copy of their license to try to make things easier. And with the changes in the fees that you did back in 2022, it's made it easier for folks who are just coming in for a day or something like that. They don't have to go through the full, you know, pay the full amount.
That's sliding scale
Right.
issue.
Yeah, one thing I'll say, at least in terms of what Tracy was addressing about enforcement, and Todd and I have talked about this a little bit. One of the challenges, of course, is that we don't require anyone to display their license. So in order for us to enforce, you almost have to go around and ask every single vendor at an event, do you have a license? I think that would be something that would be beneficial, is having them just, like you would a health certificate at a restaurant, just have a copy of your transient license on your table or what have you, just to make it easier for us to spot check. Now, whether or not we're going to go out and literally check every merchant, that's something that we certainly don't have the resources to do it all the time without having to, you know, possibly pay overtime or something like that. Another thing to keep in mind as well is not all of these merchant licenses are tied to an event. So if the license is for a merchant, but they're not going to be at an event that requires registration, there wouldn't be a registration involved that we'd be able to, require them.
Oh, I was talking that in addition to the regular system.
Okay.
In other words, just give them an addition.
Sure.
A second way of doing it.
And that's another thing we'd have to look into as well, is if we ask the organizers to be a part of this, is there any liability to the township by transferring some of our policing powers to them? I'm not saying that it might be, I don't know if it'd be a problem or not, but I want to ask, I think,
Well, we
just
have
to
the
be.
choice to tell an event, if you don't provide us with the information, your event is not going to be approved.
Well, we don't approve events. That's the thing. We only
close
register
roads.
them. Well, but if they're not asking for a road to be closed, all we're asking them to do is register, which basically is them saying they acknowledge any special services they need, like fire, police, or police. They're gonna bear the cost of that. So aside from ones where roads are being closed, there's no approval part of that. And a lot of times those approvals as well take place well before the event, so that could be a little sticky.
I just can't imagine an organizer of an event who wouldn't willingly work with the township, because I think that having a friendly means to do it, I just don't see somebody not working with the township. We're a small township.
Yeah, you would hope, sure.
Michael, thoughts? Did the planning commission look at this originally?
It has nothing, it's not a
Not
subdivision or
land- not
land
land
development,
use
so they
issue.
can't look at it.
Okay.
No purview.
Well, a couple thoughts. So we have more events now at the Bull Mansion Museum, for example. And there's a few different vendors there. So I don't remember, do we require every employee for the vendor to actually register?
Yes.
Or, so it'd be the blanket license, but then the names of all the people that would be working there have to be included?
No, each individual, the way the ordinance is written is each individual has to be separately licensed, and licenses are not transferable.
Well, what I'm saying is, so you have one vendor, a business, that has 3 people working at that thing, for example. You're not requiring all 3 people to get a license.
Yes.
That's what the ordinance says.
I don't know how we overlook that. That's a little much, I think.
I'd put a question mark on that one.
Yeah.
Well, in addition to that, it also says that if you don't have some form of identification, you have to go to the police station and get fingerprinted. Well, a 15-year-old doesn't have a form of identification, and we can't make a 15-year-old go and get fingerprinted at the police station and have a picture taken.
How we
That's,
handled that.
Hadn't come up.
Hasn't come up.
but
Right.
it's just absurd, and that's something that we need to correct.
Yeah, I would think, if the vendor has some help, I don't see, as long as we have the vendor's information, and again, social security number, how about just a tax ID number? Do we need?
Well, a
I mean,
tax ID number and a social security number could be the same
They
thing for a
could
sole
be.
proprietorship, so
I just noticed this, I
sales
can't believe,
tax.
let this slide before. Date of birth and place of birth, I don't care when anybody's born, just as long as they have an ID that has their, local, permanent address. Government issued ID, either a driver's license or a state ID if they don't have a driver's license. And again, if you got a vendor that's maybe a family business and there are 12-year-old kids there, we don't need that information on a 12-year-old kid that's a member of the family.
And a 12-year-old may not have a social security number.
Yeah.
All 12-year-olds have a social security at birth.
They're supposed to.
I think there's a law in labor law that says that if the family owns the business, 12-year-olds can work without
Yes,
papers
they
or
can.
anything.
Yeah.
Yes, they can.
Oh, yeah, that's a state law.
All right, well,
Yeah.
I'll say that this is our responsibility. Anyway, in the final analysis, we are the ones that are on the block to ensure the safety of of people that come into the township and dealing with vendors and having people coming by. So that's our responsibility. I'm going to suggest, if I may, that Tracy, since you seem to feel really strongly about this, if Mark gives you a electric copy of this and you mark it up how you think we ought to make some changes, then let's put that on the table for
Well, either send it to
a
all of
future
us
meeting.
and let us look
So
at it.
let's hear your
I
thoughts.
guess I just wanted, I wanted to say, something tell me to go ahead and
Yeah,
scribble.
no, I think you got some good ideas. I think there's ways we could streamline this a little bit. For example, having a business, rather than having a separate license, having the business, when they come in, provide the information about all the people that are working there. Rather than having each individual have their own separate license. So the business says, yes, I'm going to be there, and these 4 people are going to be working for me, and here's the basic information you need to know. And so let's
What-
streamline it a little bit and make it a little easier for people that are coming here, but make it something that we can, because again, our responsibility is ours. It's something we need to be able to enforce.
We have a new solicitor too. Maybe worth passing it through Tom just to see what he thinks about it.
What do you want to do about food trucks?
Now, what do you want to do about food trucks?
I have no idea what to do about food trucks.
Okay, well,
I know that the one thing I know about food trucks is they're actually they're under more scrutiny by the health department than I am.
Yeah.
I mean, they just
yeah.
really, they're really
We have
under the
food
hammer.
trucks coming into the farmers market.
Yeah.
We have them coming into Bowl City. But again, let's, if you would,
I'd be glad
do
to.
this
yeah,
one first.
yeah, give us a starting point, okay? Add some things out, add some things in, and then we can move our discussion forward.
Like, quick question, do we want to put that, I mean, even though the Conservancy, nobody wants it, do we want to put something in there to allow, like Memorial Day to do one thing and have our information on their application, and if they don't want to do it, that's fine, but allow it, do we want to put that in? I'm not worried
I
about it.
think, I get the feeling from Memorial Day and talking to John, I think that he'd be very willing to work with us with an application that we are looking for.
He stomped out of here last year.
Well,
when we
yeah,
talked
that's
about that.
because of the license thing, but I think that if we build an application and tell him that this is what we're looking for and we would like you to use this application, is that amenable to you? And I think that we could work together with every event to do that.
Well, again, so I think, yeah, put some ideas down on paper for us, edit it up. We'll distribute it around and kick it around. I don't think this isn't a crisis that we have to solve tomorrow.
I just want
Can
the
you
social
register
security number.
I'm sorry?
Oh, I agree. Why do we
You
need
can
that?
register online, yeah, you fill out your application.
We can go, we can work our way through it.
Yeah, no,
Done. Okay, I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
Just for clarification about the food
Yes, sir.
truck issue, food trucks are not exempt from this.
No, they're not.
That's a business that comes into the township, so food trucks are required to get a license also.
Okay.
Anybody watching this shouldn't assume, because of that part of the conversation, that food trucks are exempt.
Again,
But
we'll
for
say you
instance-
get to food trucks, it's a business. Not every individual that may work the truck should need their own
That's a
license.
policy
And
decision on your part.
in my
Currently, the ordinance
opinion,
says
that, you know, I'm kind of surprised that that slipped by before.
Well, the food truck that comes to the brewery, do they register every time they come? Because they use different.
Or they
food
just get an
trucks, right?
annual?
Usually, the food trucks get annual, or they get one of the
Okay.
longer
Okay.
licenses.
Yeah.
They fit into the $100 yearly thing.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, we made the renewal pretty inexpensive.
Yeah.
I just have a question about that. Like, in the guidelines, especially for food, I have no idea what to think about food trucks. I really don't. I mean, you have an event, you can look at an event, you can charge an event, you can do this, but what the heck do you do about food trucks?
Well, actually, there are municipalities that have food truck ordinances, and we've been talking to staff for a number of years about adopting a food truck ordinance, but we haven't had the time to work on it.
I've read the other ordinances around, and I've asked around the different townships outside of this area. And, I mean, there are a lot of different policies. Some are really strict, some are not strict, some are...
So,
That's part B.
we're gonna move forward?
Yep.
Okay,
That's part B.
everybody good? All right.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to move to approve resolution 2505 authorizing the destruction of specific township records.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes.
Didn't know we kept all these, but good idea.
Manager's report.
All right, so there's a few items here on the report that I wanted to highlight. One was about the question that came up last month. This is on number 5, related to the Mount Nittany Land Development Plan. Did talk to our traffic engineer about putting in a no left turn sign at Circle Drive. He did say that we may be able to demonstrate that it meets the warrants for that, so I can certainly follow up with him if that's what the board would like, and then bring that back at a future meeting. This is off of Circle Drive.
And turn left. Go ahead.
Not turning left towards the lake, correct. They'd only be able to make a right turn out of there
Okay.
as a safety precaution.
Okay.
Hopefully, most people do that anyway, but, you know,
Oh, I see a lot of people turning left.
I'm sure you do. The challenge with that, of course, though, is enforcement. You can put up the sign as, obviously it's probably the safest thing to do, but having an officer catch someone in the act, it'd be harder to enforce it, but it's still.
We've had an officer sitting in the traffic island down there
Right.
regularly, a couple days a week.
And certainly if someone caused an accident by doing so, that would be, something they could look at. On the back here, I included a memo from Todd that gives an overview of the short-term rental regulations that exist in the region right now. This was something the board had talked about a little bit last year, mentioned you might be interested in pursuing something. I know Patton Township is currently under preparing their own regulations for short-term rentals. Just wanted to give this to you so you have it. There is a short-term rental task force that I was on with Happy Valley Adventure Bureau. We're going to be having our final meeting, I think, here probably in the next couple of weeks, if not a month or two out. They were waiting for some studies at the state level to be finalized. So just wanted to provide that to you, and then I'll wait till you let me know if you want to discuss this further or not.
Well, I'll let them do the research.
Well, their research is really more at a state level, I think, on the impact that these are having. It's not so much on how to regulate them. So that it's a state level study, so they're not getting into the regulations too much. And I think it's controversial at the state level on regulating them, because these are certainly beneficial to some areas that they, pretty lucrative. And then also,
Discuss that further.
I'm sorry?
I would like to discuss that further at some point. Like you said that I would like that on the agenda to discuss further and go into it further. At some
Do we
point.
need it on the agenda, or should we put something together? Who would start this? Is this a planning thing, or?
Well, it would be a planning commission, likely. I mean, it depends on where we put it at in our ordinance. I'd have to ask Todd where some of these other municipalities have their license rental regulations. If it's not part of their subdivision or zoning, we may not have the planning commission involved, but.
Would it be part of the rental code?
No, it might be, honestly, where like our licenses are at, where we have the transient retail merchant, you could potentially put it there where you have licenses that are required in the township. It's something I'll have to look into a little more with Todd, but I would say that before we either send it to the planning commission or have staff work on it, certainly want some feedback from the board on what style and what level of regulation you'd want. Some of these municipalities, they're pretty strict where you can't rent them for more than 120 days a year. They need to be occupied the remaining time, verifying that. Other municipalities are using third-party vendors to go out there and actually comb the internet every day to see, what units are available on all these different websites that they list on. So it would be important, I think, to get an idea of what level of regulation you're looking for. Is it safety? Is it impact to the neighborhoods? All of the above, and then to what extent you want to regulate before we start writing anything. So.
Well, I'm quite familiar with the borough one, experiencing it myself. And one thing they did add that you don't put here is that it has to pass rental house, Center Regional Rental Housing Code too.
Right.
And I noticed College Township says it has to be owner occupied, which I think is a little much. As long as the property has a primary residence that's a long-term tenant, the borough allows that.
Right.
Makes sense.
You don't want to live in town.
Hotel tax.
You don't want to live in town.
Interesting too.
Well, we
Yes.
have a house we forced to rent that had an Airbnb in it, so we're in the middle of it.
I can put this on a future agenda then if you'd like. And
Please, I think so. I think we ought to get out in
I
front
like
of
the
this.
hotel tax. Do we want it on the agenda, or do we want to do it during a work session?
Either or.
I said, do we want it on the agenda, or do we want to do it during a work session?
whatever you would like, let me know.
I'm just saying, it might take up as much meeting time, and,
Yeah.
because we would have to come in with some kind of an outline of where we want to go for, so it's
Give it to the planning commission.
No, I think I'm sorry, I think we need to give them some guidance. We just can't hand it off.
The guidance would be fix it.
No, that's
How
not exactly
about I talk
fair.
with Todd a little more about these other regulations in the region, find out how they've structured theirs, if it's in their zoning ordinance or not, and we can also pull from some other areas outside of the region too to see if there's some other best practices we should look at, and I can provide you with another update like this if you want, and then you can decide from there if you want to have a work session discussion or a.
Well, I would even, if if we're gonna do it in the meeting, we need to have some kind of outline. In
Right,
other words,
oh, sure.
Let's get a starting point, that's all I'm saying, is instead of just having a, brainstorming session,
We
because that
can-
can go in a million ways.
We can do that research and bring you some type of a framework to at least have the discussion around, and here are the key points that you probably want to decide on, and hopefully help out with your process. How's that?
I know the borough spent a lot of time on that. The 120 days a year came up. And that's not really, I don't think that's unreasonable either in the big scheme of things. Because, like, people that are doing this Airbnb thing, they're not getting people like every day of the year, and I think that might be a little much anyway. I mean, I'm gonna be I'm already, house next door is already Airbnb. That was sold at auction a year or two ago, and there's nobody living there. And every now and then there's people there, and I think that should be. I'm not comfortable with that.
That's
So,
your current house yet?
what?
Where you live now?
Yeah, our
Across
next.
the street?
No. Okay, we own a house across the street that's not Airbnb. It's a permanent rental.
Okay.
Our immediate neighbor to one side, the house was sold a year or two ago. I don't remember exactly. And an investor bought it, and they're not doing anything with it except Airbnb right now. And
Well, I think the things that, in my case, the things that we've had issues with them is the keggers. No, we don't want keggers. We want rules in there that we don't have keggers. I mean, that's when we've got the most complaints and the problems with the short-term rental.
For me, it's the impact on the neighborhood.
Yeah.
What's funny, because like, when we go to an Airbnb, and we even consider like how many cars we're taking. We go every year, up to the Finger Lakes, a group of us, and we consider everything. And I just think that, a lot of people don't consider this. And it wasn't me who thought about the cars, but between all of us, we're adults. We're, older adults. And I think sometimes you get younger adults and you have less thought of things.
All right, well,
I wouldn't.
let's pursue it a little more.
Yeah. The other thing I'd mention is Denny asked that these survey results be included in the packet as well, which you all got a copy of. Right, of the comprehensive plan, right. So
I have the last
if anybody has any questions otherwise on any of the other items that I didn't cover verbally, let me know. Be happy to answer them.
All right. Motion to approve the voucher.
I'll make a motion that we approve voucher number 2025-1 for $211,088.18.
Second.
Discussion, questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. Committee reports. The executive committee, of course, you were at the meeting, so we set the agenda. I will let you know that the review for our executive director of the COG is coming up, and I've got to have it into them in 3 or 4 days. So if you have any feedback you want to give to me about that, please send it forward, and I'll incorporate it. Parks Capital Committee did nothing. You'll note the irony again, the chair of the committee I want to get rid of. Parks Governance Committee did not meet, basically waiting for the new appointments from various municipalities to get their feet on the ground and get up to speed. And the Park Authority, God, my handwriting stinks. One thing they did is Park Authority moved to ask the Parks Capital Committee to get to work on funding the boardwalk and funding the Hess Field.
So that's where that ended up, because I knew we sent it to you.
Yeah, and so I asked them, like, let's Parks Capital Committee. My feeling is the Parks Capital Committee is going to exist, and let's make it a functional committee and not just,
Paper tiger.
yeah, so that's where I'm at. Nigel, Human Resources?
Okay, Human Resources, we met last week. We put our rubber stamp on a personal leave of absence policy that was not included in the, was pulled out of the employee policy manual quite some time ago for us to tweak it. So we are recommending that for approval to the General Forum. We did approved two job descriptions, both for Parks and Rec, a recreation program specialist. It's a new position that was budgeted for this year, and the other position is just an update because of a vacancy now. The Parks Specialist number 2, horticulturalist position is going to be redefined and called, let's see, where is that? Yeah, Park Specialist 3, natural resources person. So, and we approved that one too. And that was busy for human
And
resources.
climate action and sustainability?
We just met today. Basically, we had a presentation by a Penn State student on local climate impacts that are predicted between 2050 and 2100. Kind of interesting. Update on the CAAP progress report. That's the Center Region Climate Action and Adaptation Plan. Update on that, and then an update on the transition to the new refuse contract. And that's it.
Denny, Lucy?
Yeah, okay, we had 2 meetings. This one was first Thursday last month. I didn't bring it out loud. First single sheet tells us a little bit about the thinking of the population with respect to future growth. Strongly agree with the need for a plan, stronger need for controlling growth. You can look at that information. On the second colorful sheet, we had 15% of the respondents. There were 398 respondents to the comprehensive survey. Harris Township had 15%. Some general comments. 92% of the people that responded own their own property. 56% of respondents have an income over $100,000. All kinds of good information here. Question 23, individuals and developers should be free to develop land without a lot of controls. Strongly disagree. That sort of supports the other question. One below that, the economic needs of the area should be a driving force. Disagree on that one. Made a lot of notes. What improvements should be made to enhance long-distance transportation? Number 37, more connection to rail service. Interestingly, they never talk about the fact we have rail service 32 miles away. Yeah. And then 34 talks about public transportation. People want more service to the neighborhood. Read through it, a lot of good information. The solar power one, we met on the 29th. Major discussion was making sure that all of the information was sent in on the contract documents. Mark did that for us. And the other major item is that we will be transitioning to a Senator County Solar Group, which is going to be a yearly appointment like we do on our authorities. One individual representing all of the members of the SPPA. That'll be happening probably the beginning of 2026. Okay.
All right, Frank, you're up. Finance.
Finance, we met last month and did our reorganizational meeting, had a little bit of discussion on what we were gonna do for the year. Our next meeting is this Thursday, which, well, I haven't looked at the agenda yet. So there's nothing really going on yet on that, except that we're gonna try to do things a little quicker again this year.
That's what I was gonna ask you.
Yes, we're gonna try to go faster. Well, what we're talking about is putting the program plan ahead of the capital plan. That way, that's the one that gets most of the comments and it comes at the end. Instead, we're gonna try to move it first and then do the capital plan, or have them go in conjunction, but address the program plan earlier rather than later.
I mean, I just like where we're at, where it was just like, it's the last minute, take it or leave it.
Yep, I know, we're trying to get away from that. And State College Area Connector, nothing's going, I haven't heard anything back on NEPA yet. It'll be probably another year before we hear anything. MPO did not meet, we meet the end of this month.
Okay.
Me?
Yes, you're up. Facilities?
Well, I mean, I was unaware when we first got together what everybody's stance was on the Hess Field. So when we were talking about it, there was a lot of blowback on the sewer going in. And there were a lot of comments also about how we have to, correct me, Mark, we have to put a waiver in for.
It would, to expand
Right.
it, yeah, you'd have to either have an exemption built into the implementation agreement or do the DRI process, one of the two, to be able to do the sewer.
So my problem is when they said that, you know, when they actually said that, I'm like, well, we really need to do that to show that we really mean business about what we want. Because we haven't done it, and I don't understand why we haven't done it, because there's no, like, I couldn't go in there and say, well, we're ready, we're waiting for you. We're waiting, because now they're waiting for us. So there's pushback on it, because they're waiting for us to have that exemption for them. So I think that might be something we'd like to address as quickly as possible, to make sure we have that, and we can push back on them. And also there were comments also about the cost of it, but I have some problems with what we've moved on to versus what we didn't complete. So, and then there were suggestions about, of course, the, temporary bathrooms. So I'm sitting there thinking, if you have temporary bathrooms, my comment was, where are we going to put them afterwards? What are we going to do them? Or why are we buying them? And then when I talked to Frank and when I talked to you about it after the meeting, I found that the opinion was the sewer line was the only thing that we're interested in. And so I told Ben when I went back, and he said, I was surprised how easy you made it for me. I said, well, I wasn't quite sure what the stance was. And I said, guess what? He said, that is where we are. So, I mean, that was the big thing for us, basically, with what's going on with facilities. So we went over, like, some of the reviews of the project, of course, and reviews of what's upcoming, but that's it. Public safety did not meet, but we did meet before, and I know this doesn't pertain to us, but I think it's clear in some of the idea of spending in the COG itself. The Alpha Fire Company made a decision to purchase a vehicle from, I think it was Bedford, that wasn't being used anymore. The equipment on it was out of date, and it was either going to buy it or lose it in the state of Pennsylvania or something to that effect. When they said to me that the vehicle can be used for certain things, and I was kind of like, well, does this really pertain to us? Is this like an emergency for us to do something like this? And he's like, and the comment was, well, we can help out in Pittsburgh. And I was like, why would Pittsburgh want us to go and help them? It was just confusing to me, but it kind of led me to understand a trend, and that is concerning to me about where the COG goes and how decisions are made. And that's like, there's no.
I think I made a comment at the general forum about that, about the solar power purchasing agreement, and that's what's going on. They're making decisions without coming to us. And then we're sitting there saying, well, okay, they already made the decision. They've committed us to the money before we even know we can authorize it. So I agree with you that we do need to look at some way of getting that under control, and We're working on it.
Well, there was money available to do it. I just wonder if it was really something that was needed versus something that was wanted. That's just it. But then again, it doesn't really affect us, but it was, I just thought it was important to review because it runs into a standard of what we're dealing with every day. That's all.
Let me comment on the Hessfield thing. I think that, first place, my opinion is, we ought to do it right. You know, and if we have to delay a little bit to do it right, let's do it first class. I think any of us that are on a committee where this comes up, keep the committee engaged, you know, so that all of our colleagues are in on the conversation and up to speed, you know. And we'll stand up for where we think. We may not all agree, but again, my opinion is, let's not do it half-assed, let's do it right.
And the other part of that equation too is that the one thing we forget as elected officials and throughout the center even is, remember, yeah, they're authorities, but we appoint the people to the board of directors, the UAJA and the water company. And I think it's time we start, you know, saying, no, you will, like, I don't think we should pay full price to put a sewer line into Hessfield from the, I already said we can tell them we want beneficial reuse water, and he would always do that for free, and always put that in, we'll tell him to put a sewer line in beside it. But I think we need to use force, or whatever you want to call it, use our input there and start getting some feedback from those agencies.
Do you think that we could get the exception for Park and Recs sooner rather than later?
You're talking about the sewer exception?
Yes.
That's a process that has to go through a regional level, so it's either gonna have to be where the implementation agreement is amended, because right now, there's no way to just extend sewer to a regional park. And that would have to be either added to the implementation agreement, or we'd have to go through the DRI process that's included in that agreement. Either one, I don't think that we're the appropriate, at least at this point, we wouldn't be the ones to make that request, because I don't think that's been decided by the region. It'd be right, it'd be the authority's decision if they want to have that be the option they move forward with. Otherwise, we're spending a lot of money and time on something that may not be supported.
Well, I think what we're talking about here, and I think we could do this, is that just do some kind of a straw motion that we would support authorizing sewer to Hessfield. I think that's what you're talking about. In other words, this board would say we would support, you know, going through the DRI process, whatever it would be, we would support that as a board so that Hessfield can get sewer, and send that in and say, look, they've already said they're on board with going with that whichever way we go. But I think that's what you're talking about.
And the other thing is they said, well, we could extend the growth area of Harris Township, which would put that in.
Oh, no.
But I understand that that's not really where we're going with this. Or we could make an exception for Park and Recs. And I think that we have to move forward with some kind of something to show them that that's what we want to do.
That exception would have to be built into the agreement, and that would have to be voted on by all 6 municipalities that are party to it. But that would be a far easier process than doing any type of growth boundary.
Yeah.
In my opinion, just that would be
I don't
easier.
want to change the growth boundary. I really don't.
Right.
But, yeah, that's what was told to me. Now, the only problem with it is, you know, I think that you're going to get a little blowback from Ferguson Township because their comment is, you know, spending the money, which I think is unfair considering the amount of money we spent elsewhere.
On Whitehall Regional Park.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You finish one before you start another, and that's my opinion and everything.
We spent a lot of money on legal fees on that thing.
Yeah. Yeah, the one thing we've proved in the last 5-6 years is we are not job site managers.
Okay, item 9.
So moved.
Second? We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.